Welcome back to another episode of Curveballs and Lemonade. I'm your host, Judy Kogan. Today's guest survived meningitis twice, and she's here today to tell her story. Let's welcome Lauren Rosaasen. Hi, Lauren. Welcome to Curveballs and Lemonade.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Let's dive right in. Before we get to the beginning of your story, which starts when you were a baby, tell us a little bit about who you are today.
You got it. So, I am a mom of two, and I live my life and I try to do things that kind of push my comfort zone, considering I did almost lose my life. So, I'm trying to make up for it by living as much as I can.
Thank you for sharing that. We're going to dive into that a little bit later. So, you've survived meningitis twice, decades apart. Um, Now, before we get into kind of the details of both of those situations, do you think of that as sort of one story in your life or two separate things that happened to you?
I kind of look at them like two separate things, considering the very first time was a different strain. That one was viral versus the second strain was bacterial. So it was a little different. Plus, the recovery was definitely different.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. All right, so let's talk about that first battle with viral meningitis. So, you were, as I understand, a baby, 6 weeks old. Is that right?
Yes, I was a little baby.
Yeah.
So considering that one happened and we caught it fairly early, the earlier you can catch meningitis, the better it is because there's less chances of having, prolonged absence of things versus if you catch it later, there's a lot that comes with that.
Yeah. So what have your parents sort of, told you about that you went through at that time?
Well, at that time, I've seen a lot of photographs. So I
Oh,
definitely can see that I was in a lot of pain.
yeah.
Um, However, from what I've heard, because I was in newspaper articles and there were people that were interviewed on when I had gotten sick too.
Oh,
And
wow.
from what I heard from them, I only survived it because I was younger and because I was on the healthier side.
Got it. Now, growing up knowing that you survived such a serious illness like meningitis, how did that shape you at all? Like, because that's a pretty intense piece of information to have and to know about yourself growing up, right?
Absolutely. Well, when I was younger, I would say it didn't shape too much because I grew up and I didn't remember. I also didn't have to go through any rehabilitation because I was so little, so I just grew and developed kind of like normal.
Yeah.
The second time that I had it, it was the bacterial strain. That's when all the rehab was 100% necessary because I have meningitis, but then directly following that, I suffered from encephalitis due to it. And that's just heavy inflammation of your brain. And that can lead to the memory loss and the vertigo and all kinds of dysfunction.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. So, this is perfect timing. So, take us back to your senior year of high school. What
Yeah.
was going on in your life sort of right before you got sick that second time?
Yeah, so it was absolutely normal as far as I knew. I had just started my junior year of high school and I was excited. I really didn't pick up that anything was about to happen. I did develop somewhat of a skin rash on my lower half of my body. That was a little concerning. It looked kind of petechiae-ish, but I wasn't sure. Um, that it would turn into anything like this at all. I just was like, huh, how strange. All right. I guess I can't, wear pants, wear shorts, show my legs.
Okay.
But and then slowly, right before I found out what had happened, I just started struggling to do very minimal tasks like turn a doorknob or stand leaning on one leg or just things like that that weren't adding up to being normal.
Yeah. And so at what point did you sort of realize, okay, like this is more than like not being normal. This is like something else that could potentially be serious.
Well, I started to feel it. I could definitely tell that things were escalating and that it was out of the normal for me. I didn't think that it would be anything like meningitis. I remember telling my family, and my family, especially my mother, not really thinking anything of it. And kind of being like, oh, it could be just started a new school year. It could be you're a teenager. I don't know. Things happen. They don't always get taken the most serious. So,
Yeah. So at what point did either you or your family say, like, okay, we should probably, like, have a visit with a doctor or
Mhm.
maybe go to the ER? Like, what was your first sort of medical intervention at that point?
Well, that's the thing. So, my mother did take me to go see multiple doctors. I did have visits, I did have blood drawn, and it was nothing that was detected at all. So I guess that kind of led to them being like, oh, well, it can't be that serious because we tried going to the doctor and nothing was, reading as a possibility of being wrong. But they did try.
Yeah. Okay. Um, all right. So at one point you were hospitalized. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did that happen?
So the moment leading up to that realization that it was meningitis was my mother had dropped me off at her mother's house, my grandmother, to take care of me for the day while she was at work. And um, my grandmother had been just, feeding me, and I was laying in her bed and everything. And she brought in actually a cup of noodles and she was feeding it to me. And I
Yeah.
guess I somewhat lost consciousness,
Oh,
according to her. And it was enough to scare her into calling an ambulance to come get me. And then
okay.
that's kind of when I got to the hospital. They did the spinal tap and it came back.
As bacterial meningitis.
Yeah.
And where was this? So you said you started to feel some symptoms at the beginning of your junior year. At what point, when did that happen?
Yeah. So the rash on my legs that I had developed about mm, 5 or 6 months before. So way before anything had actually happened or accumulated in my system. And then after that, it was very quick, very quick. I started sleeping and then I just wasn't waking up. And so my family knew that something was wrong.
Okay. And were you missing school this whole time?
I was, yeah.
Wow.
I was.
Okay. So thank God for your grandma, right? So she made the right call, obviously, to the ambulance. And then do you remember like being in there, arriving at the emergency room? Do you remember that?
I don't remember any of it. I actually, so right after they did the lumbar puncture, which is when they take the fluid from your spine, which is supposed to be extremely painful, but I was already in so much pain that it's just I didn't feel anything.
Wow.
But so they did all that, and then it escalated so quickly because meningitis is something that is very time sensitive. So once they realized that I had it, not only did they freak out because they have to quarantine everyone that was exposed to me, but
Yeah.
they have to take it extremely serious because it just escalates so fast. And upon arrival, they transferred me to another hospital that was able to care for me, a neurology department. And when I'd gotten there, I was admitted and I was in so much pain that I was already at the point of like laying in my bed and not moving at all. And I just remember this moment of laying there and I was in so much pain. I was basically paralyzed. I couldn't move. The doctors just assumed that I was in like a pain induced coma kind of state. And they had come into the room and they were talking to my mother, and I'll never forget, they had said that they didn't believe that I was going to survive the night. And I heard all of it, but I couldn't react. I couldn't move any muscles. I couldn't speak or open my eyes. So I just sat and listened to them telling my mother that she would need to start making arrangements.
Wow, what did that feel like for you to hear that really devastating news from your medical team and not being able to uh, like respond, ask questions, or really react? Like, what did that feel like, and how did you internalize it?
I was absolutely terrifying. It was one of those moments where all I could do was just lay there. And I kind of felt as though maybe they were right. I thought maybe I wouldn't leave that room ever. I thought maybe I would slip into this sleep and maybe I just wouldn't wake up. I was awake and alert at that moment, but maybe I wouldn't be for long.
Do you remember how your mom reacted upon hearing that news?
I just remember how incredibly quiet the room had gotten after it was said. Um, and she just kind of, she didn't have much of a reaction at all. She just kind of, I think she was in denial that anything really could happen from it.
Yeah, as a parent, it's pretty shocking news. I would imagine for her, I could understand how she could be in denial. Wow. Okay. Well, you made it through the next day, thankfully, right?
Good. Thank
Um,
goodness.
what do you remember what happened the next day and in the days after that?
Honestly, it all kind of meshes together. I know that I was moved to different areas, or different hospitals and facilities, but and I know I was there for months on months, receiving different kinds of care because initially they had to treat the meningitis and then they had to start treating the encephalitis. And then it was all recovery mode and all, occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, all of that. Um,
Yeah. So I was going to ask before we get into the therapy piece of it, because I do want to ask a lot of questions about that. Was there a certain point that you remember where it was sort of like, okay, like you're in the clear, not in terms of like what your quality of life would be, but in terms of your actual surviving this? Like, was there a point where they were like, okay, um, you're going to survive?
well, the thing was is that I wasn't 100% hopeful that that would be the outcome of things. I know that when I was there and I was receiving treatment, there was about five others that had meningitis, just like me, and they were all around the same age. And day by day, I just remember hearing word that each one of them passed away. And in my room, actually, in fact, there was a little girl. She was about 8 years old, and I was, of course, 17. But we were separated by a curtain. It was divided, between the beds. And the doctors would come in to do, regular blood work and to do all kinds of things and take stuff from us because for testing purposes, as I understand. But when they did do that, I would hear her name was Alyssa, and I would hear her scream and cry and become very, very upset. And so I told her one day, I said, anytime that you feel that that could be coming on, that you feel alone or that you need someone, because our parents weren't always able to be there. Sometimes it was just us, understandably so. But I told her, just open that curtain and hold my hand. And I'll help you and we'll get through it together. And that night they wheeled her away to go to occupational therapy, and when she came back, she had made me a friendship bracelet with her initials and mine, and it was so sweet. And then about 4 hours later, she had passed away.
Oh my goodness, Lauren. Wow. I I mean, I was just getting ready to say what a beautiful soul that you were in your state being such a support for her. But now, upon hearing that news, that's a lot for you to carry as a teenager, to watch a little girl that you've gotten to know just in the room next to you. Um, and then also scary for yourself too, right? She also had meningitis?
She did, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same exact thing, which is why we were in the same area at the hospital together.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry for her and for her family. And at the same time, I'm so thankful that she had you. I mean, what a gift you were to her. I, I I mean, I do have to ask you though, I mean, how did you, that's a lot for you to handle. Like, how did you get through that?
Well, it was jarring. It wasn't easy. But after I heard news of her passing, at that point there had been no one left aside from me in that ward of the hospital that had the same disease.
Mhm.
And so um, it was just kind of a moment of survival's remorse, I think they call it, where I was just questioning, like, why am I still here? If they're all gone one by one, why am I still here?
Yeah. Were you able to answer that question for yourself at that time?
My faith got very, very strong in those moments when I was hospitalized, and I turned to God, really. And
Yeah.
so even though I didn't understand, I knew what I needed to do to help
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about just the physical part of being in the hospital. Like, obviously, there's blood testing, there's uh, uh, imaging, right? Did you have to go through like CT, MRI? What was that like for you?
Oh, extremely painful. That's like the number one thing I remember from the whole experience is that these things they weren't easy. Like at one point, before they took me for a CT scan, you can't have any traces of metal in your body, which for me, I had just gotten before the meningitis even happened. I had just gotten braces put on. And so they had to come into the room literally with just pliers and brutally just cut them out of my mouth. And they were not gentle at all with it. It was so painful. Um, but
Wow.
yeah, so
Yeah, that's a lot. And then any other imaging that has kinda stuck with you? I mean, the braces, that's really rough. Anything else that you sort of remember that was like, "Okay, this is really, really, really over the top hard."
at this point, I could not stand. I could not do anything for myself. I couldn't hold my neck up, my muscles in my neck. It seemingly all the things that I had taken for granted throughout my life,
Yeah.
things just like chewing and swallowing. These are automatic things. These are things that can seem like they're, rights, not a privilege. It's a right because, you earn the ability to do these things. Um, it seemed like they were all fading away one by one. I was losing abilities that I had always had. And
Yeah.
that was incredibly hard. Even just having to go to the restroom and realizing that I can't just stand up and just walk over there. It's right there. And I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Were you going to, at that time, physical therapy and occupational therapy to help you sort of relearn those skills?
I had just started. Yeah. Things weren't going too great. with the therapy that was set in place. California, they really do really well. The health center that I was at, they, God bless them, they were trying their absolute hardest. But I think the encephalitis had attacked that part of my brain and I lost all motor function. So it was definitely a hard job for them to try to rehabilitate me.
Yeah. What did that look like, the rehabilitating part? And I guess before you answer that, I'm sort of want to know, like, was there a point where they were like, okay, um, you're sort of past this like really sick point where you can now work on regaining those skills? Or was it like, we don't know what your future is going to be, but we still have to work on these skills?
Well, that was one of the scariest parts because the doctor came and talked to me, and he basically told me that I'm at risk for developing the meningitis again. It was in my bloodstream at that point, and there was no telling, no telling, when or how it would happen or if it would happen. And so I lived every day just being so grateful whenever I did open my eyes in the morning.
Yeah. That must have been hard for you to get up every day and push forward, right?
My family, they took shifts. Sometimes it'd be my mother, sometimes it'd be my grandmother's. My boyfriend at the time would come to the hospital, and we said he was my cousin so he could come in there.
Right.
But they all took turns, and they all also would wheel me around in the wheelchair,
Yeah.
which some were better than others. My grandmother let me go a few times into a rose bush outside, but
Uh
that's okay. I
oh.
forgive her.
um, all right. What did therapy look like, though? I mean, was it sort of like every day you had like PT, OT, speech? Like, what sort of like was it a regular thing? Was it like a occasional thing? How did that look like when you were in the hospital?
Yeah. So when I was in the hospital, it was a daily thing. The therapist would come into the room and put me in the chair and wheel me out, and we would work on whichever activity they had planned. So if it was physical therapy, we worked on getting in and out of a car a few times. So because even that was a very difficult task. And speech therapy, occupational, all of that.
What was your speech like? Was it like was it I guess what I'm asking is like, did you lose words, or was it just difficult with the motor function to to speak? What was that like for you?
I actually lost the tonality of my voice, which was strange to me. I had grown up in where I was in choir my entire life, and then in high school, I also was in choir, and so music was very important to me. And just to be able to speak and not hold my cadence of my talking voice was very strange because I would talk and people would be like, "Wow, that doesn't sound anything like you." And I remember being in the office during therapy, and they were like, "Oh, so I hear you don't sound the same as you did before." And I said, "Well, that's what I hear too." And she said, "Well, do you have a video of what you used to sound like?" I said, "Sure." And I pulled it up on my phone, and I just remember the look on her face. She was like, "Wow, that is a different person. You don't sound like that at all."
And could you hear the difference though, or did you not recognize it until it was brought to your attention?
So, right when the meningitis impacted me, I lost so much memory, and I lost a lot of memory that was how my voice sounded. So I could hear other people telling me like, "Hey, this happened to you, XYZ, you lost this ability." But to me, I was like, "Huh, okay, if you say so."
Yeah. Wow. Was there a moment, during all of these therapies and rehab when you thought, Like, I'm working hard, I'm doing this, but I don't know if I'm going to get back to that person I was before the meningitis.
It was very scary. I didn't think I was. I thought that I knew that that person in a way had died, the one who came in there. And I knew that the woman walking out of there, or I guess being wheeled out of there,
Yeah.
um, she was a different woman completely.
Yeah.
And I knew that I also had an incredible amount of amnesia and brain damage. And I thought I was just kind of starting life over completely.
Yeah. Now, how long did you spend in the hospital?
I believe it was about 6.5 months
Okay.
altogether.
So that takes you did you make it out by your senior year of high school?
I did right at, I believe it was summer still, but it was a few weeks before school had started.
Okay. So how did it come about that even though you were still working hard to get back to, some semblance of who you were before, how did it come about that your medical team uh, decided to release you from the hospital?
So it got to a point where I was able to do the most basic of functionality, and so they kind of decided they actually didn't want me to leave. I remember that, but I was trying my hardest to convince them that I was ready. That it was I wasn't 100% recovered, that's for sure, but I felt safe enough to be discharged and then to continue therapy outside of the hospital. So just, 4 or 5 times a week, come to therapy.
Okay. Now this may seem like a silly question, but at that point, like, was the meningitis out of your system? Not out of your system, but like the active infection was at that point gone?
Yes. So the
Okay.
active infection was out of my body as far as we knew. I'm pretty sure it was, but I always am going to have a little bit of it living in my body, even if it's dormant.
Okay.
Uh, mhm.
So what did that look like? You're back home and you're in a pretty intensive rehab program, right? Like, still continuing with all your physical therapy, PT, OT. Um, uh, that's a lot for again, now a senior in high school. Um, what did that look like once you were home?
That was the craziest thing. I felt like there was no normalization. I was a shell of the person that everyone says that I was. And they had all these stories and experiences that I was like, wow, okay. Yeah, like I said, the whole if you say so kind of thing. But I didn't understand what they were all on about, who I was as a person. And then when the time came for me to, you know, start my senior year of high school, my mother and I sat down and we met with my school counselor to discuss what everything looked like because I would need, more breaks than the average student. I would need wheelchair access into my classrooms. I would need, help getting there. I would need time that they would understand. It took me longer to get from one place to another. And so we sat down to talk about that. And when we talked about that, we discussed where I was at um, grade point average wise, and also where I was in the track of being able to graduate since it was my senior year and I had missed so much school.
Yeah.
And she just kind of looked at my mom and me and said, graduating isn't really she didn't see it as a possibility that it
Okay.
could be in the cards for me.
That's a lot to hear. How did you feel when she said that?
I was kind of like, at that point, I had a little bit of confidence in myself, a newfound one because of, surviving the sickness. But at that point, I just kind of looked at her and I was like, well, we're going to do it. It might be extremely hard, but we're going to figure it out. Whatever I have to do, I'm going to do, but I'm going to graduate.
And did you?
I did.
All
Yep.
right, so congratulations. So what did that year look like? Not just in terms of the schooling, because I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that you had to the reason why she was so pessimistic about it is that you had probably had a lot of catching up to do, right, to make sure that you met those graduation requirements, in addition to completing all of the current year stuff, which is a lot. So, how'd you make it happen?
So I had school on school on school. I was always there. I had morning school, night school, afternoon school. Back when I had a few classes that I didn't have to take during the day. Oh no, I did end up taking them. They were just classes from the previous year that I was catching up on. Um, but I was determined to try to make it happen.
Wow. And what did it feel like when you found out that, okay, you're allowed to graduate, you are going to cross that finish line?
When I found out, I cried. I cried. I had a moment where I was like, I didn't think these things were possible. I didn't think prom was possible for me. I didn't think graduating was. Had that confidence, but I was still a little scared on the end because I was making up for half a year of school. And as quickly as possible. If I had been, in a younger year of high school, maybe it would have been easier. But because I was so close to the finish line, it was detrimentally scary.
Plus, you were not like fully walking, fully, moving your body in the way that you were. You're still rehabbing. So that's like an added obstacle. So that's really amazing that you're able to do it, able to
Thank you.
graduate. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So I understand from you that shortly after you graduated, you got married and you moved.
I did. So I actually got married like 2 weeks after our school ended. I graduated,
Wow.
and he was military, and so we moved overseas to Guam to go live there. And as you can imagine, Guam doesn't have any resources readily available as far as continuing rehabilitation. So when I told my family, they were like, whoa, wait, how are you gonna, excel? How are you gonna finish these things?
Yeah.
And I really didn't have an answer, but I was like, I'll be okay. I'll figure it out. At that point, I'm 18. They can't really stop me,
Yeah.
from getting married and leaving.
Okay, so what did your rehab look like when you got there? Like did they have any resources or was it like completely self-directed based on what you had learned
Yeah.
before?
None. None at all. I'm talking dirt roads, like there were chickens in the street,
Mm.
pigs running wild. It was apparent to me that I didn't realize just how third world it would be until I got there and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is not America. I'm not in America anymore." Um, but when I got there, I realized I was struggling to do everything. I couldn't get a cup down from the cupboard. I couldn't start the laundry machine. Everything was hard. Tying my shoes was super hard. And
Yeah.
upon realizing my family is a million miles and an ocean away from me, the only support I had was my husband at the time, and he was working 24/7. They had him busy, busy, busy. And
Yeah.
when that moment hit me, and I was like, okay, Lauren, you got to figure out what you need to do in order to continue some kind of rehabilitation. It was one of those moments like in Kill Bill when she's like yelling at herself and she's like telling her toes to wiggle. She's like, move, move. And so I was like, maybe I could do something similar. So I got obsessed with the gym and working out because I was so tired of struggling for everything. So I started going to the gym sometimes 2 times, 3 times a day. And I was working on little movements, things that in therapy they had me doing that I was thinking were strengthening my skill set. And things slowly but surely started to come back.
Okay. And how long did you stay over in Guam?
So we were there for, I think, 4.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and during that time, you're newly married, in a place that didn't have all the resources, but it sounds like you found a way by going to the gym of learning what you had learned that you were, that you had done while you were rehabbing at home. Did you continue to rehab that whole 4.5 years?
Um, Somewhat. I think every time I did something, it was slowly things were starting to come back. Even memories were starting to flood back. While I was there, though, I decided to adopt 3 dogs to rescue,
Sure.
and um, so that really helped a lot in my rehabilitation. Also, because I'm caring for something other than myself. It's
Yeah.
a responsibility, and so it was hard mentally, physically, everything. It was very hard.
Yeah, and I would imagine also, with your husband working so much and your family so far away, it was also hard probably not to have like an immediate sort of constant support
Yeah.
system there.
Oh, yeah. I was on the phone with my mother and my grandmothers every single day, multiple times a day, and I would talk to them too and kind of break down because things that shouldn't be hard, things that are so easy for other people,
Yeah.
they were so hard for me. And I knew it. And people at that point, I would do my best and I wouldn't bring up the meningitis to people. In my mind, I was like, well, if they look at me and they don't think anything, is wrong, then I'm just going to let them, hold on to that thought. But sometimes people would be like, oh, your walking is so much better today, or things that should be considered compliments, but to me were just reminders that I was not normal.
Yeah. When you say they made comments, like those are people who knew you had survived meningitis or maybe just knew that you had difficulty walking?
Yeah, they were people who had at that point known that I had. Of course, they don't know the full extent of it. They don't know the background, the severity of it, but they know that, my walk was maybe way worse and it slowly was starting to improve.
Yeah. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay. Let's fast forward to an encounter that changed everything for you. You were working at Ashley Furniture as a sales manager.
I was.
Okay. And it was just a typical work day. So set the scene for what was about to be an encounter that changed everything for you.
Absolutely. So we had moved back stateside at that point. They call it PCSing. We were now in Maryland on the East Coast. And it was a normal work day. I just went in there. I think it was a few hours into my shift. And this elderly gentleman walked in and he just had this like sadness on his face. And he just so happened to be the man that I was assigned to helping around the store. So when he had come in, I greeted him. I asked him, what it was that he was looking for. And at first he was a little hesitant. And eventually he had told me, he opened up a little bit and he had told me that the reason that he was there was to buy all new furniture for his home because his wife of 40 years had just passed away. And he couldn't stand going home and looking at all this furniture and having all these memories. So he was there to replace everything. And I sat with him and he cried and we talked for a long while. And uh, after hours of that, we kind of had decided on what it was that he was going to go with and purchase. And when we had come up to the counter, he was saying how thankful he was and everything. And he leaned in to hug me and he asked me, he goes, "If you don't mind, can I ask you, um, do you believe in God? Are you a Christian?" And at that point in my life, after the meningitis, I was very atheist and I had zero spirituality, zero faith whatsoever. And I looked at him and I said, "Sir, I have to be absolutely honest. No, no." And I'll never forget how he looked up at me and he just smiled. And it's like his face was changed. It was different. And he looked at me and he said, "No, you are." He goes, "Good people like you, they don't just happen." And I remember after that happened, I held my composure as good as I could because I had to be professional. And then I ran to the bathroom and I just cried my eyes out. And I told my boss, I was like, "I have to go home. I can't finish the day." And I went home and everything changed.
Wow. What why do you think it was that moment? Like, what do you think that it was in that stranger who was able to reach you in a way that you hadn't, been reached before?
I, I honestly, I don't know. It was special because it felt so intense. I had a few really good run-ins with customers at that point that I would get to talking to. It actually became problematic. I would be pulled into my boss's office all the time. They were like, "Lauren, you cannot. We're here to sell them a sofa, please. Like, sell them a sofa. We're here to do a job." And I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, I know." And they were like, "The only one you're hurting is you because if you're not making these sales, you're not making the commissions. So it's really only affecting you." Um, which I understood, but it definitely didn't change anything.
But I also sort of feel like a couple things. Number one, you are who you are. You can sort of change the way you interact with people while you're performing your job. But at the end of the day, you are who you are. And the other thing is, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like in sales, if you connect with someone, they might be more inclined to sort of, you know, trust you in terms of like, you know, you're offering them something that seems that you understand they need. And so
Yeah.
um
It can
so
almost be more valuable to them, because I'm willing to listen. I realized that, so many people have a story.
yeah.
And to me, it wasn't just, "Hey, you want to buy a mattress?" Like it was, who are you? Who are you? I know that you just walked in through this door, but tell me about the day you're having, or tell me about why you want this specific piece, why it matters to you.
Yeah. So you've said that the biggest part or a big part of your story is sort of what happened after that encounter. What happened next for you?
So it was kind of a domino effect. Things had gone somewhat wrong in my marriage at the time, and it led to a divorce. And then quickly after that, it led to me going cross country to go back home and live in the same house that I was just in when I had the meningitis, and my same bedroom and everything.
Wow. What was that like, sort of being back, in the same environment as you were when you had first gotten sick?
It was so strange. Like even my paint in my room was the same. It was just kind of a reminder, of
Yeah.
how far I've come. But at that point, because I was freshly divorced, I felt like I hadn't changed or gone far in life at all. But I felt like I was starting from square one. And when I came back, there were people who totally treated me different because of the meningitis, you
Yeah.
know? And at that point, I was kind of starting to slowly navigate the dating scene too again. And I remember um, being on this app and talking with this one man, and I had opened up to him a little bit and told him about the meningitis. And then he was like, wow, you're, incredible. You've survived so much. But then quickly it turned into, can you send me a video of you walking? I just want to make sure that you can walk. And so that was very, awkward for me. And
Yeah.
as you can imagine, I didn't keep on opening up to people about it after that.
Yeah, that's really tricky. Because I would imagine that's really tricky for you to know sort of when the right time to share that with someone because it is such a huge part um of who you are. Now you said your life should have ended or could have ended at that time and even possibly when you were a baby. But you're here. And what do you believe you're still here to do?
For my purpose, I can't tell you I 100% know. Um, I love being a mother. It's the best thing I've ever done with my life. And if that's all I get to do with my life, then that is more than enough. But I just pray and I speak to God every single day and I pray over my children and I try to take more risks because of it. It's completely altered my mind and who I am as a person. And like I said, I've had people pretend like they didn't know me, after the meningitis or just treat me as if I'm extremely frail and fragile, which I wasn't. And so these little things, they were very difficult and it altered my state of mind. I'm a very driven kind of person, a very no excuse kind of person. And I think that's truly because of what it is that I've gone through, how I've survived. You don't go through what I have and just come out this whimsical person that is just frolicking throughout life thinking that everything comes so easy. No, I've seen what it's like to be right on the edge of life and death.
Yeah.
And I can't take that for granted. There was a man that I was interested in pursuing, and we were talking, and he looked at me and he told me, you're too serious for me. And at that point, I was like, oh, okay, well, let me think about this. Maybe he's onto something. Maybe I am a little too serious. Um, and then I flashed back to all those moments of everything that I've conquered and been through. And I looked at him, I said, no, you know what? I'm not serious. I'm intentional. And everything I tried to do in life, I try to make it as on purpose as I can because I don't know what tomorrow holds. I really don't. The doctors told me that there's an incredibly high chance that I could develop this again because I've had it twice now.
Yeah.
And they told me that, if I don't keep myself healthy, if I don't constantly work at the gym, if I'm not on track of my diet, I could easily develop this again. And my chance of survival the third time is excruciatingly low if I'm not as healthy as I can be.
Yeah. Now, are there warning signs that you're supposed to look out for so that you can sort of minimize the risk should you contract it again?
I find myself panicking a lot when I'm starting to get sick, or even my own children, really, because of what I've been through, and in a way, it's kind of traumatized me into thinking, like, oh, if I have a fever, oh my gosh. it could be meningitis. Here we go again, and with my children, I get worried too. I'm like, oh, there's a fever, my son, and I get worried. And I talk to my partner now and I tell him that, I get a little worried, say that, it could be serious. And he has patience with me and he is really loving and understanding. But at the same time, he knows that the likelihood of it being what I had is it's very slim, very slim.
Okay. Now, if someone is listening to your story, which is really truly an incredible story, um, and is in the middle of a situation where they also maybe had a brush with death and shouldn't be here now, or had very slim chances of surviving. If they're in that chapter right now, what advice would you have for them now that you're a little bit further out from where you were in high school?
I would say separate yourself from, as hard as you can, try to bird's eye view your situation kind of out of body and view things as if going forward is the only option. Don't give yourself another, like, oh, what if? It's so easy to slip into the void of what could happen. But when you're facing a life or death situation, you cannot give yourself that chance to sink. You can only say, what if? What if I live? What if I am thriving? What do I have to do to wake up and be grateful and be happy and to live life to the fullest?
That's such great wisdom to live life to the fullest, and certainly how you seem to be living your life. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners that I haven't asked you?
Well, I guess one thing that I didn't, talk about previously to you is something that I struggle with till this day. I struggle with it being embarrassing or feeling shamed by it, even though I probably shouldn't. And that is that I don't drive. And to me, it's like the biggest like moment, but to everyone else, I think it's not the biggest deal. But the meningitis and the swelling of my brain after it robbed me of some advantages that I would have normally had, and uh, one of those is driving. So I worked for years and years with multiple instructors. I've gone to multiple schools. I've tried so hard. I've had my permit more times than I can count because it's only a written test. So that one I'm good. I can
Yeah.
pass. But driving just might not be in the cards for me. And the reason is because the meningitis affected this area of my brain that's responsible for my reaction uh, and my reaction time. And so when I was driving, it became problematic, and all my instructors would notice that my mind, my brain wasn't telling me when to stop the vehicle on time. So
Uh-huh.
I had that delay. And as you can imagine, that delay is life or death. Like
Yeah.
if you don't stop on time at an intersection, then you risk sticking out and just being hit and
Yeah.
life over.
And unfortunately, today's crazy drivers pull so many maneuvers that even if it's not an intersection situation, cutting you off or doing all kinds of other stuff, which unfortunately does impact reaction time. That being said, I don't think that there's anything. I mean, you're amazing. There's nothing to be ashamed about or embarrassed about not driving. If anything, what I would say is that um, good for you for realizing that you're safer and your family is safer. Um, you know, with you not driving. And that's not to say that someday you might be able to. Your drive and your will to recover from what life has dealt you has pushed you beyond the limits. So I would say never, because you never know. And I will say thank you for sharing that um, with everyone. I know that probably wasn't easy for you to share. What do you want to leave our guests with?
Well, firstly, I would definitely say take your health serious. Like, take care of yourself. You only have one body your entire life, and please give it the nutrients that it deserves, and don't take anything for granted. If you can get up and it's not hard for you to get out of bed, if you can go to the fridge and just pick out what you want and chew it and eat it and digest it, like, without having to think about it, please be appreciative of those little things, because everything can change so quick. And other than that, I just want to say invest in yourself. It's the best thing you'll ever invest in is yourself. And please just pour into your own cup as much as possible and do things that are going to make you a better person for other people too.
Yeah, those are great words of wisdom. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. Um, I your story's not over yet, too. I look forward to
That's not. Yes.
keeping up with you, learning where life takes you. You're truly, truly an incredible person. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Judy. I appreciate being here. It's been wonderful, and to tell my story because a lot of people, even people that would consider themselves somewhat close to me, they don't know this whole story. So it's incredible. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Curveballs and Lemonade. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and subscribe so you never miss a new story. New episodes drop every Thursday. Follow us on Instagram at Curveballs and Lemonade and on Facebook. For audio listeners, make sure to check out full video episodes on YouTube at Curveballs and Lemonade. Engineered by Robert Altschuler, Curveballs and Lemonade is produced by Command Creative Studios.